Hi guys, in today's video I want to take a look at how to fight against the Owen's defense, which is after e4, then black immediately plays b7, b6. So with the move b7, b6, black wants to fianchetto his bishop to b7, and the point is to immediately put some pressure on white center with his pieces. So as black, you already start with one tempo down, and now black is investing another tempo into the move b7, b6, which is a good sign for white. But nevertheless, this line is quite tricky, and I believe many black players are hoping for white players to crumble under the pressure and to drop one of the central pawns on e4 or d4. So here I will show you what setup you can use and how to defend these pawns effectively. In the end, you will have a more active position and more space. So if we want to prove to black that his setup is suspicious, I think we do need to play d2, d4. We take a larger share of the center and our pieces can be developed more easily. So the overwhelming majority of black players here goes for the move bishop b7. And I want you to definitely remember the next key move, which is bishop d3. And I added an exclamation mark because I truly believe this move is very strong. And I'll try to explain why. We want to castle short soon, and that means this knight will probably go to f3. It's the most sensible square. But in that setup, it's also important to make a good decision about where to put the light squared bishop. So developing it to c4 right away or to e2, it doesn't make much sense since it immediately drops this pawn. But let's say we play knight c3 first to defend it. Then after, let's say e6 and bishop c4. Black will not only win a tempo with d5, since now the bishop is attacked, but he also has another idea. He has an annoying pin in the form of bishop b4. So now our pawn is hanging, and let's say we play bishop d2, then black can take on e4. So as you can see here, our center is already under pressure and we're losing a pawn, and I think this is exactly the kind of nonsense that black players are hoping for. This is exactly the kind of thing black players are hoping you will fall for. Finally, let's see also the square b5 for our bishop doesn't make too much sense since it doesn't really do anything. And black can get a7, a6 for free now or later. Let's see, let's say you might consider fianchetting the bishop on g2, right? So you would start with knight d2 to prevent maybe this bishop from pinning the knight later. So after e6, g3 and c5, you can see that c5 is a strong move since the knight blocks the queen and the d4 pawn isn't defended. And as you can see, whenever the queen leaves the d file or the queen is blocked from the defense, then c7, c5 can be a pretty strong move for black. So in conclusion, we took a look at the number of tries, and we definitely by process of elimination come to the conclusion that bishop d3 in fact is the best move. The bishop can't easily be targeted, and it brings some extra protection, much needed protection for the e4 pawn. So after bishop d3, most people here, so the overwhelming, let's take the classical games, an overwhelming amount of people plays e6. Some players also play knight f6 and only then e6, but usually it will just transpose. So after, let's say, e6, so let's say after knight f6, yeah, after knight f6, knight c3 is in fact possible. But then after e6, you do need a way to counter this bishop b4 by black, and a very interesting idea here is to go knight e2 when bishop d4 doesn't really do anything, and in fact black is in trouble after e5, knight d5 and castles. So this is definitely a setup which you can try. But even stronger, I think, than knight c3 combined with knight g2 e2 is the move queen e2. The point isn't just to defend the e4 pawn, but also to be able to put a lot of pressure on this square here on e4. So why is that? So in case this knight here jumps to e4, so let's see that. So let's say e6, knight f3. Also, we play this knight f3 since, yeah, let's say if we play e5 here, then obviously this pawn will drop and the rook in a moment. So we play knight f3 to develop the knight, but also to block this diagonal, so the bishop can't take on g2. Let's see then, alright, so after knight f3, black plays d5. Right, so after d5 we can play e5. Black players usually jump to e4. Knight d7 is also possible, but it's a little bit more passive. So after castles, c5, and here you can see that this move c5 is not as strong, since we have this knight here protecting d4 actually. So here, black's development is very poor, and we are already castled, so it makes sense here to blast open the position with c4. So I indicated with some colored circles which pieces are developed. So for black, this bishop and this knight are developed pretty well, and for white, well, let's put an orange box around this. But certainly these pieces have a lot of activity and scope, while these are the only ones that aren't developed for white, while black has almost all of his pieces still on the back rank, and he isn't castled. So this is a perfect time to play c4. Let's say c takes d4, c takes d5, queen takes d5, then we can play bishop to c4, and if queen to d7, we can actually play bishop to b5. And here there's some nice tactical sequence: bishop c6, bishop takes, queen takes. If knight takes, then obviously that drops the knight here on e4. And so if the queen takes, we can take here on d4 with a tempo. After queen d5, we have rook d1, we're threatening a discovery. Let's say black tries to chase away our knight. Then we have knight f5, targeting the queen, targeting this g7 square. Black could try to take on f2, but here we can just shuffle the king to f1. And now everything is hanging for black. So this is already +4 or something. So let's say queen takes a pawn, then we can play knight d6. And I think even better than taking with the knight is to take with the queen, since we are forcing a queen trade pretty much immediately. And after bishop c5, not sure what this, why this is not so good. So right, so I guess we're immediately getting some tempos on the king. All right, and bishop c5 prevents this maneuver. Well, we can just take out the knight then. And here white is up a piece for 2 pawns and the position is totally winning. So let's go back. Instead of queen d5, let's see. Sorry, instead of queen d7, black can also go queen to c5. In that case, we can just go knight to d2. If the knight takes, then now pretty much all of our pieces are developed. Well, black still has trouble with these pieces, and he isn't castled yet. So here, rook to c1, and if black castles, this is not ideal, but we even don't have to do that. The queen is almost trapped, so black only has d3. We take, and after a few moves, we move to e4, and after knight e7, we can finally take the queen. And black gets some material back, but we are just up too much material for black to survive here. So now let's take a look what happens when black plays e6 on the third move. Then we can play knight f3. Let's say black plays d5. In this case, you could, I think, play e5. That's, I guess, also good. But even better is to take here on d5. So when black plays e6 first and leaves knight f6, leaves the knight on g8 and plays d5, you can take. And if the bishop takes, then we can play c4, kick this bishop away. Here play knight to c3. Let's say knight f6, queen e2. And here again we are taking firm control of the square on e4. There are no jumps to e4. Bishop b4, we can just meet that by castling. Let's quickly see what happens if black takes. I don't think he should, but let's put on the engine and see what's up. Let's say castles. Bishop g5 or knight e5 are IDs, so bishop g5, queen d6. Right. Okay, so let's say knight e7, then we can play knight e5. And I think we can even take here, ruin his pawn structure, double his pawns. Well, bishop takes c3, as you can see, isn't so good. But we needed to check it out, since once black plays bishop b4, that's maybe one of the ID he might be going for. So after castles, let's say black castles, then we can play bishop to g5. Here, let's say knight e7, rook to d1, h6. Now we can just drop back here. So g5 I think is too dangerous, since we can drop back and then I guess try to play with h4 or f4 later. Not sure, let's say c5 here. Yeah, so in this case we are infiltrating all of the weak dark squares. This is a consequence of this bishop being on b4 and being locked out by his pawns. So In this case, black can't defend his dark threats here on the queen side. So let's say he goes back to e7. Then we can play bishop b1, trying to create a battery here. Let's say c5 here. Then we can jump in with the knight. Knight takes e5 isn't such a great idea, since we here have now a double attack on h7 and on the knight. And if black doesn't take, yeah, it looks like we can also take here. So pretty much are a lot of good moves here. So this position shouldn't scare you. It's great for white actually. So let's see if c5 here. We need to check that out. If c5 here, then we can do a lot of things. I do think knight e4 is very interesting. We're threatening to take on f6, and I'm wondering if I can get some more games here. Yeah, someone tried knight to d7, but looks like after a3, knight e5, things are going south for black. Since now c6 is weak, so we can jump in with c6. Let's say queen c7. That's a fork, and if queen e8, now the queen protects this square, but we can just go pawn grabbing. So knight e4 indeed looks like a good move. If black takes with the bishop, then we can take with the bishop here, and now this rook is trapped. So now you can see that when we defend our center, develop our pieces actively, there's a really big chance that black will get into tactical trouble later in these lines. So I showed you here with bishop g5. Yeah. So here, let's say black defends with f5, then we take and we win a piece here. And let's say instead of taking with the bishop here, sorry, let's go back. So instead of taking with the bishop here, black takes with the pawn. Then the problem, I think, is that this e-file here gets open. So after bishop e7, rook e1, knight f6, we can make it hard for black to castle. Black protects his bishop. We attack the piece defending his knight. So now we're threatening actually to do this. Bishop b5 is something black can try, but we can just go here. This isn't an option since we are winning the bishop, and this doesn't work since we can, I wanted to say do this, but that would be a mistake since since this bishop can take back, but we can take the queen, and black can't take here since the rook is pinned to the king. So that means that after queen e2, knight c6, bishop b5, the black king has to go to f8. And from here, well, the king is uncastled. All of our pieces are active. So this should be a great position for you to play. On the third move after bishop d3, some people prefer to go g6. In that case, I recommend again knight f3. Again, blunting this diagonal, so developing the knight, getting ready to castle. And after bishop g7, the very aggressive move h4. After h4, black players will usually play h5. If they don't, I think we can quickly punish them by going h5. And here, I think you can check that out for yourself a bit. It's an exciting line, but I think it will lead me too far in this video going over all these lines if black plays a suboptimal response. So here I'm going to check out what most players play, which is h5. If h6, then I guess the idea is to quickly go for a long castle situation and throw forward your pawns. So this should be really nice for attacking players if you like attacking, and I guess who doesn't. If h5, then we can play knight c3, e6, bishop g5. Again, these dark squares are weak, even though there is a bishop here on g7. And after knight e7, we can play d5 with the point that after e takes d5, knight takes d5, we are threatening this knight. f6, well, we can take here on f6. And now we are threatening the bishop, so we're just winning everything. And if bishop takes d5, then we can play e takes d5. Let's say black gets greedy and takes on b2. We just castle, we sacrifice this rook. Since after queen takes e1, we are still have the spin. We are attacking h8, so plus 9.7 if you can believe it. And after rook takes e1, rook to e1, black doesn't have a good way to get out of the spin, and he will just lose more material. So yeah, g6 I think also shouldn't give you any trouble. And as always, if you want to play this, I would highly suggest you put in some research of your own. Finally, if black on move 3 plays d5, then again we can play e takes d5. So when black plays an early d5, a good recipe is just to take on d5 and try to gain tempo, try to gain tempi on the piece that retakes. So in this case is the queen, and maybe black here is getting excited because of this battery, but we can again just block this diagonal, and after queen e6 just bishop e3, and after the more sensible e6 we kick the queen away with c4. Queen h5 is what black might try, then we can just go bishop to e2. Let's quickly, I see someone here played queen g6, so in that case we can just castle. Knight c3 is also a possibility, so just castle, bishop d6, and here someone tried knight h4, I'm not really sure about that. b4 seems sensible, since you want to kick away this bishop here. So black was starting to build something which looked like an attack, but we stopped it. So instead of queen g6, black might try bishop to b4, and after knight d2, knight c6, castles long is an idea that black might try. I think this is probably one of the better lines, although as you can see it's still better for white. When here we jump to e5 with our knight, The point being that we have discovery on the queen, so the queen has to move. There are not really many good squares. So after f6, 94, we chase it away all the way to e7. Then we take here, misplace this bishop, kick this bishop. And I think the engine recommends knight takes c6. I think even b4 might be interesting, although looks like that is not good because of this spinning issue here. Yeah, so this queen spins, so that's something you should take into account. So just take out the bishop then. And with bishop e3 protect this pawn. And that's, I think, the last major try black has. He might have other tries, but really I think I showed you what you will encounter in the majority of the cases, and now hopefully you will have a better idea what to do when you encounter the Owen's defense. So we go d4, after bishop b7 you go bishop d3. If black plays an early d5, you take and gain tempi on the piece that retakes on d5. If he plays knight f6 or e6, so knight f6, queen e2, and you can take space here. And since there are so many pieces controlling e4, that's no problem. What other line did I have? Oh yeah, so there was also e6 immediately. When we here also take on d5. Here is the same story, we gain tempi on the piece retaking. And finally there was, I think, g6, when we go knight f3 and we go with an immediate h4 and quickly develop our queenside pieces with the intention of castling long and getting a quick attack going. So that's all for this video. Thank you for listening. If you liked it, please like, subscribe or leave a comment, and I will see you maybe in one of the next ones.